my son told me, "Dad, how did you get that job? You can't even turn on the computer." But that was a little bit of a stretch.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th episode of The Download here at Tier 4 Advisors HQ. I am joined by our friend, partner, mentor, leader, and overall great guy, Tino Mantella.
Guy.
Thank you. Thank you, Tino, for coming.
And my pleasure, Jake. Anything you need me to do, I'm there for you, buddy.
Absolutely. It's great having you.
It's really great being here. I know you guys have been doing these for a bit now, and I'm glad I got a time at the plate here, so that's good.
Awesome. Tino has been a staple in the Atlanta, Georgia technology scene for quite some time. So, Tino, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to the crowd. Some people obviously know who you are. Others probably don't.
It's funny. I keep running into people that they don't even call me Tino. They just point to me and say, "Tag," But it's amazing how many people I meet on tennis courts and golf courses and in various points of business. So, yeah, Tino Mantella. Right now I'm doing a bunch of things, including very proud of being a partner at Tier 4 and also being president of the TurkNet Leadership Group and also involved with a sports tech company as a co-founder. So all kinds of things going on. Plus spending time with the family a bit and, trying to make it all happen and keep it in balance as much as I can.
Well, if anybody can do multiple things at once, it's Tino Mantella. And, when we talk about all the things that you have done and the experiences and the lives that you've touched, not only at TurkNet now, Tier 4 now, the Sports Technology Group now, but in the past, obviously, TAG, and then before that, the YMCA. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, you took over TAG when it was a much smaller group. By the time I was lucky enough to recruit you to Tier 4, TAG had become the largest technology association of its kind in the country. Probably 99% of it because of you and the great team that you built there. I know how you are. It is all team. But talk a little bit about that, where it went from kind of that small group to really a national leader.
So unfortunately, Georgia and the technology community hit the bust in 2000. And by the time I arrived on the scene in 2004 at TAG, we probably had about a 3-month burn rate in terms of money available. We were down to 300 members. We had 5 board members who had kept the organization alive because they put enough money in themselves to keep it going. But I like to say they were arm weary by that time. It's like, okay, Tino, you're here now. We've given enough money, make it happen. But those board members stuck with me. We ended up building a board from 5 people to over 60, all the community leaders. And the timing was good. So I went out and did, as you know, Jake, I always do this. I did this at Tier 4 as well, 90 meetings in 90 days.
That's right.
And when you do that, you have some basically basis to say, here's what the community's telling me versus here's what Tino thinks, who wasn't in the technology community before that. My son told me, "Dad, how did you get that job? You can't even turn on the computer." But that was a little bit of a stretch. I said, I can turn on the computer. But because of TAG and a lot of other groups, the community started to actually see the importance of technology. And after 2004, all those things came together. As you guys know, the technology industry was booming. There was a lot of change. So the combination of being at the right place at the right time and having a good team, looking back now, we're in the top 5, I would say, in the country in terms of technology. So.
All right, so next part that we're going to talk about is the best thing we saw all week. This is one of my favorite things that we do here at the Download, so it allows us to talk about, again, the best thing that we saw all week. Joel, we'll go ahead and start with you. What was the best thing that you saw all week?
So as a drone enthusiast and an FAA certified drone pilot, I pay attention to what's happening within the drone industry. So DJI, one of the manufacturers of high-end drones, but also kind of entry-level drones, they have released a new FPV drone, which is a first-person view type drone. You put on this almost Hornet-style looking like headset, and these buttery smooth images that these drones get are incredible. In fact, there's probably going to be a little bit of a footage running right now as I speak, but like it is so beautiful. And so I need to save up a little bit of money to get one of these drones. But that $1,300 for just the drone, then you got to pay a couple $100 for the goggles, and you got to pay an extra couple $100 for some additional battery. There's a whole. It's expensive, but it's awesome. But some so that's the first time I saw it. It's been out for a couple weeks now, but I reviewed it this week, and it is amazing.
I got to play in a scramble golf tournament at East Lake Golf Course.
What a beautiful golf course.
Great course. And Jake, you've played with me. You know I'm not a great golfer.
Oh, you are a good golfer, actually.
But we played with a good team, and I was able to sink an 80-foot putt, and we got an eagle on the hole. So that was a treat for me. It's kind of like a hole-in-one. My wife said, "Did you get a prize?" I'm like, "You don't get a prize for making a putt."
A long putt, yeah.
But they should have given me something for that.
That's right. An 80-foot putt for eagle. That's one of those, top 5, top 10 golf things you'll always have. That's great. Best thing I saw all week, actually, I was a part of as the head coach of a youth sports baseball team. I know that we talk a lot about tech here, but I'm going to share this as the best thing I saw all week. My team took the week off. Everyone went to the beach and did their own family spring break stuff. We joined in for a one-day Sunday tournament. We play. We're an all-star team at a park here in Atlanta, and we played against 3 travel teams. Well, we beat the first one, then we beat the second one. To put us in the championship game, we're down 5-0. We come back a little bit. We're down 8-3. End up winning 9-8 in the bottom of the last inning of the game to come back against a powerhouse program. Yeah. And what I mean by the best thing I saw all week was the fact that these 11-year-old athletes did not quit. They continued to be gritty. And I think it's a great reminder to all of us that just sometimes because you're down doesn't necessarily mean that you are out. There's always a chance. There's always a chance until you give up that you can win that game. Culturally speaking, why is the South so willing to network and take meetings in some cases where other markets, let's say, pick on a couple, New York, Chicago, California, might be a little bit of a harder market to do that in? Is it just the people? Is it the culture in the city, the South, Southern hospitality?
Well, you and I do business now with companies all over the country and around the world in some cases. Sure. And you're from California, I'm from New York State. So, if you go to New York and you want to have a meeting, it's like, okay, you have 10 minutes, tell me what you want to do. And then it's like, boom, 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 you're making the decision. Here, it's, eventually in a state like New York, you develop a relationship, you make friends. In Georgia, there's a relationship pretty early on, and we don't want to stereotype, but that relationship also has to get deeper because people are really friendly, but doesn't mean necessarily that over time they're going to do business with you until they get to know you. And it's the same in New York. They're just coming at it in different ways. But you make a good point. I mean, the cultures are all very different. So this community really there was a need to come together and network, and we could do something like you've been to the summits and all, and there'd be, 1,000 people there. I mean,
you get this kind of melting pot here in Atlanta where, being from Northern California, you see that as a melting pot for the world. Being here in Atlanta, you see it as not only a melting pot for the world now, but, a decade or two ago, it was certainly a melting pot for the Southeast or even the East Coast for a lot of folks. You would have thought that maybe there would have already been this kind of tech hub, Silicon Valley of the South mentality, but there wasn't.
The schools certainly helped, and having the base here, those schools you mentioned, was great, but the perception from the rest of the country was we were all those things, agriculture, and not really a tech state. So part of the job of TAG and the Atlanta Metropolitan Chamber, Metro Chamber of Commerce, and others was to begin building that brand that there could be technology in the state. One of the big moves we made back now about 13 years ago was I had breakfast at the OK Cafe, which was a big spot, as you know, for the tech community. You and I have done a few meetings there. And I asked a couple of the big hitters in the venture capital space, one being Ellen Mosley from Norrell Mosley Partners, saying, what does Georgia need to do to be a leading tech state? and he said, we need to have a major venture capital event. And we got a couple organizations, the CIO Council and the Metro Chamber, to come on board, and we created Venture Atlanta. And now Venture Atlanta is one of the top venture conferences in the U.S., and every year they get 30 to 40 companies that pitch to 700 people, 200 investors in there. And I think over maybe $3 billion now has come through that. So a lot of things came together. Certainly companies like Tier 4 were able to help in terms of not just, obviously we're beyond Georgia, but just the things that we can do to support companies. So really the community came together. The other interesting thing was when I arrived on the job, there was about 100 different organizations that looked like TAG. And that began to, because when I did my 90 meetings in 90 days, people said to me, one of the things we need to do is, bring the community together, like you'd say in any business or whatever. It's just so spread out. And there's so many, these little groups doing different things that you can't get any power behind that. And so we were able to convince a lot of them to become special interest groups or societies to TAG. So we end up with 36 different societies.
So in the past, you've had an opportunity to interview some really interesting folks. I still remember thinking, sitting in the very back row probably, or one of their back rows at an event, you're up on stage. This is years before the idea of ever getting a chance to work with you. But you're interviewing Ted Turner on stage. And I don't know if you remember this conversation, but I'll remember it word for word the rest of my life, where you guys were talking about some of the things that Ted had done, some of his experiences, the fact that he was a billionaire. And you said to him, well, being a billionaire is pretty cool. And he said, being a billionaire is really not that cool. And then you went back at him and said, well, I would disagree. And then he said something to the effect of, well, I'm the person that's the billionaire here, so I'm the one that's the trusted, opinion in this sense. Do you remember that conversation with Ted?
So, you had to have a lot of questions ready to go and have a good sense of humor, but the people in the audience were cracking up, and they loved to hear him. But he's a smart guy and talked about his satellites and starting CNN and, all the things that he does. But if I met with his daughter beforehand, and probably this might go viral, so I probably shouldn't say too much, but his daughter says, he really doesn't probably want to talk that much about technology. Here I'm thinking, okay, he's my keynote speaker at the Technology Association, Georgia's big event of the year, but we can't talk about technology. So that was funny. True story.
I mean, I remember people... was it the CEO of Microsoft? I don't think it was Steve Ballmer, but it was the guy after Ballmer, or was there some other folks that you interviewed?
We did get to talk to Ballmer, and we also, we had him as a speaker, the head of BlackBerry, which was interesting while BlackBerry was still going strong.
So Tino, in 2017, or I guess at the end of 2016, you had the choice to kind of think about a next career, next phase in your professional life. And you made the decision to come join us here at Tier 4 in 2017. What was the kind of leading factors that led to you wanting to join with Tier 4?
So Jake and I knew each other, but not real well. And but I liked him, liked his wife, liked the concept. Saw that there was real integrity here in terms of how it was done. And I always say this, whether Jake's around me or not, but I say this was really a genius idea because I like the way that it's played out, where you mean to say that we can help companies. A lot of times we don't even charge for that service, and they're going to save time and save money. And so I said, yeah, I'm all in. And it took us a while to come to the final arrangement, but that was great, and I'm really happy that I did it, and still involved with the organization. It just, I think the concept, you always look for things, particularly when you get to be older, of who you're going to like to work with, and are you going to have an impact. And Jake mentioned early on that all of my career, whether it's YMCA or TAG or whatever, has been helping people in some way. So both with Tier 4 and with the TurkNet Leadership Group, It's two other ways to provide a service that somebody's going to say, you know what, you saved me money, you saved me time, you helped me to become a better leader, whatever it might be. So, for me, that good people, good opportunity, great chance to, generate revenue for the company. And, so that's why I did it.
So since 2017, you've been involved in numerous projects. I mean, Tier 4 collectively has done thousands of projects around the globe, but are there one or two that come to mind that you were involved with that were some of your favorite projects you've been able to engage with here with some clients at Tier 4?
Well, Joe, there's one you and I were involved with, have been involved with, that is nonprofit but health-related industry. And the thing I like most, kind of given my background too, is, and the thing Jake likes most as well, I'll speak for both of us, is that we're trusted advisors. So that means that we're going to do more than one project with a company. Because anybody can come in and help somebody with one project, but to go back and them calling you again. So the company that we're talking about, I mean, we've helped them with everything from wiring to security to helping them move into the cloud with Azure and Microsoft Azure. And so, that's one that has meant a lot to me because they keep calling. We're their company to help them with anything they're doing in relation to technology.
With the 5 areas that we had, even when you joined a number of years back, it was really data center and telecom at the time. Over the years, we've added managed services, security compliance, emerging tech. We jokingly call them pet projects in that emerging tech or emerging strategy idea. So again, it's not necessarily as a vendor, but as someone who sits on their side of the table, helping them simplify and expedite those projects. As someone, if you will, kind of like a Sherpa would help you go up Everest for the first time. That Sherpa's climbed Everest 100 times. It's nice to have someone on your side of the table that's done that a few times.
Well, even the best procurement offices would have difficulty keeping track of all those new vendors coming in the marketplace. Some of them they don't want to know, but some of them they should know because they're going to be really effective for them. So Tier 4 team every week has a company or more that's presenting something to the team so that we're kept aware of the newest technologies and the best vendors that are out there.
Yeah, continuing education is key.
Well, one of the things that I learned before I took the job at TurkNet Leadership, when you go into a new company, you're always keep an open mind and you're learning a lot. And one of the things I thought, my perception was that coaching, executive coaching, as an example, would be for people that were having blind spots. They were on the verge of maybe getting terminated or what have you. And that's totally not the case. About 90% of the people we're coaching, and we're coaching some of the top CEOs in the country, but not just at that CEO level, is that they really want to grow and develop. And most good leaders figure out ways, whether we're talking about reading, listening to Audible before all three of us, they're on a constant learning track.
Arguably one of the best basketball coaches of all time, Phil Jackson, talks about the idea of coaching players differently. I think that, the way he coached Michael Jordan is different than the way he's going to coach Dennis Rodman. And as a leader, reading his books and listening to interviews of just someone like that was eye-opening to me in the way that you're going to coach, the way that you're going to manage, the way that you're going to be even viewed as a leader is going to be different by every single person on your team. Some people will respond to certain things differently, or I should say some people will respond to certain things positively where others might, do things differently. And, oftentimes leaders, the successful leaders are ones that are able to somehow be kind of that translator, if you will.
Well, you make a good point on that because, as you think about talked about the generations in the workforce and what are there 5 now, soon to be 6.
Right.
And you have, and again, I'm generalizing, but if you try to supervise, and we have tried, no disrespect to millennials or baby boomers, but if a baby boomer's supervising a millennial like they did 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it's definitely not going to work. Because when I remember sitting at my desk at the Chicago YMCA saying, look, you're here to figure out what I need, and you need to respond to that. Now you have to totally flip that around and say, what do you need?
Sure.
And then see if you can figure out a way to support them. And, there's mistakes that are made. I've certainly made my share of them, because it is, at some point you don't supervise everybody the same way. And if you do, that's a mistake. So learning those kinds of things. And, TurkNet certainly teaches that, whether it's in anything they do in terms of succession planning, pre-hire assessments. The other thing is, because you mentioned culture, is really understanding the culture of the organization. Because if you come into, you might be the greatest leader in the world, and you come into an organization that is not a cultural fit, then you either have to figure out how to change the culture, or you're going to get, whipsawed somewhere along the line.
What are some ways in which you do change that culture? What are ways that you make that happen?
Understanding what their thoughts are about the culture, what their satisfaction level is, what their engagement level is. And then from there, typically, we can do some group work. We like to say, have courageous conversations where people really have to be clear about what their issues are and what they're thinking about. And then start to change policies as appropriate. And in that case, it might mean to have a more of a training program to make sure that there's equity there and not unconscious bias. I'm just using examples around the diversity side. And then to include coaching in that, whether it's group coaching or individual coaching, because and typically at the leadership level, because if you're, and I don't mean just the CEO, just that whole level of people, so that they're starting to understand more about the company and the kinds of things they do that they don't realize are tweaking their employees, and to have a culture that's aligned is important. So we do a lot of work on the culture side and looking for alignment. If you have two companies merge, you know this situation, that you have different cultures, and how do you get the cultures to think as one? A lot of it is, I'm sure, Jake, before group and advisor came together, you spent not time just thinking about what the marriage would be from a standpoint of impact, but also what the marriage would be from a standpoint of the people coming together and how that would all work.
Yeah, it's much easier said than done. And you have different leaders that have different visions. You usually have to unify that somehow, some way. And the communication, again, needs to be absolutely, top notch in that regard, for sure.
What's a story from either of your careers that's maybe a off the wall, a little bit crazy of experience that most people wouldn't know just on their everyday conversations with you? Jake, we'll start with you, and then Tino will come your way.
So what comes to mind when we were talking about this subject was a lunch that I had probably about 5 years ago with a CIO and a couple of his right-hand lieutenants. And we're sitting down, we're breaking bread, we're discussing, we order our food and we sit down and kind of get into the mix of what this group was about ready to do. Long story short, they were absolutely hell-bent on going to Amazon Web Services, AWS. And they were taking that hill no matter what. And it was coming from the two lieutenants, not necessarily from the CIO. And so I started asking some questions. Again, we don't sell anything, but as a trusted advisor, it's almost kind of as a fiduciary, my responsibility to kind of bring up things that, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? Anyway, so started asking some questions, and by the time lunch was over, I realized that they were still going over that hill where there was a crevasse, and not a whole lot that I could do there. And sometimes that's as a parent, we know sometimes the kid needs to touch the stove to realize how hot the stove is, if you will. I still remember to this day getting a call about 1.5 years later from the CIO. I'm coming home from a conference actually down in Orlando at the time, and get the call. And, hey, Jake, this is so-and-so. You were correct. I'm sorry, what? You were correct. This cloud journey has been an absolute disaster. So prior to, they had about a spend less than $10,000 a month with AWS. On this phone call, he told me that their spend had grown to north of $700,000 a month, and they had no idea what they were doing, how to control it, etc. A crazy story that I'll probably remember the rest of my life, where if we could have just simply talked through some of the strategy and perhaps done a little bit more diligence for these two lieutenants who were basically making the strategy for this company, we could have helped them avoid a lot of pain that they had to go through in that learning process. Pretty wild story.
So, I'm a sophomore at Temple and on the wrestling team and the judo team. And so I decided to start a judo class there. Well, there was a kid that was really a mean kid. He was about half my size. And one day I remember telling him they had a basketball game or whatever, and I told him to put his sneakers on because the bus was waiting for him. He stood up about half my size, and he swung as hard as he could and hit me right in the stomach. Fortunately, I was ready for it, so it was wasn't an issue. But I was really tough on him, and I thought that the kid really didn't like me at all, and I wouldn't blame him. And in judo class, which he joined, I did a little harder throws on him than I did on anybody else. Didn't faze him at all either. He just come back for more. And so 5 years later, so I went on and did other jobs and all. I hear from this young man, and he said something like, "Thanks, you really helped change my life." And I guess the moral of the story is, and because I've had these experiences with the YMCA and different jobs, you never really know how much impact you're going to have on somebody.
We all live in such a "what have you done for me lately" kind of world right now. But oftentimes leaders are graded by what they have done for their organization lately. However, I think that oftentimes leaders, some of the fruits of our labors as leaders come later in life, because you get to see where some of your players, if you will, if you want to use a sports analogy, where some of your players have ended up. Some of them will end up in the Hall of Fame. Some of them will end up as coaches themselves. Some of them end up even more successful than you.
Well, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for joining us, Tino. I think it's time to spin that wheel.
All right, let's spin that wheel, and we're going to come up with a question that we'll answer together quickly as a group. All right, number 5, Joel here. So, favorite book you recently read and why?
So the author is Donald Miller. The book is Building a Story Brand. And this is basically how to tell your story, clarify your message. It's absolutely phenomenal. If you are a business leader, if you are in marketing, anyone can benefit from reading this book or listening to his book or his podcast, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Check it out.
Good stuff. Tino, we'll come to you next.
Well, a lot of people know Malcolm Gladwell from Tipping Point. Right. Well, he has a new book now, and for those of us that listen to books, this is really interesting because it's almost like a book podcast. He has interviews in the book with people, so there's live interviews, there's reenactments by actors, and the theme is around people having misperceptions basically about strangers. And so they make bad decisions because of those misconceptions. So it's a really good book.
Interesting. Very cool. My book that I listened to recently is Die With Zero by Bill Perkins. If you have an opportunity to check it out, it talks about the idea of certainly working hard and giving back to society, but also enjoying the fruits of your labors.
Just for our listeners, we do have a handful of VIP events that are coming up. So here locally in Atlanta, there's 2 that are on the radar. May 7th at Etowah Valley, we have a clay shoot. And then on May 26th, a very friendly golf outing at Atlanta National Golf Course. The Masters was just completed, so I bet you a lot of people have an itch to get out and play. Visit tier4advisors.com/events, and you can sign up for one of our upcoming VIP events. Also on May 28th, we have a golf outing at the Dallas Cowboys Club there in Dallas. And then shortly after that, June 11th, we have another golf outing, COVID-friendly, outdoor, of course. another golf outing at Gaylord Springs Golf Links in Nashville, Tennessee. So if you're an IT leader that wants to come out and network, meet some of your peers in the area, tier4advisors.com/events. Love to see you there.
Come play some golf, shoot some guns. You know, you can do some networking, keep your distance, wear a mask. A lot of folks are obviously now getting vaccinations and things like that. But our goal here is to give our potential clients and our existing clients a forum where they can get out of the home, get out of the office, come out and do some networking, and candidly maybe do an event that they enjoy and get some fresh air. So that's what it's all about, doing the best we can. So again, folks, thanks again for joining us for another episode of The Download. Tino, we couldn't thank you enough for finding the time to come over here and being a part here. I am truly lucky to be surrounded by folks like Tino and Joel here on the Tier 4 team. If you have any other projects in the data center, telecom, managed services, or security and compliance areas, please feel free to reach out to Tier 4 Advisors. We're the one-stop shop, the easy button, if you will, where you can reach out. We can help you try and figure out what vendors do what best in those respective areas and help you expedite and simplify those projects. Until next time, we'll see you around. Take care.